All right. Well, hello, everyone. I think after Carla's talk, you probably all have a question. I just hired her, so she is no longer on the market. Yeah, back off. All right. So my name is Kristen F, and for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to be sharing with you all just a few of the things a few of the ways, in which leading an engineering team for a year has made me a better individual contributor. So first, timelines. So in January of 2021, I was asked to serve as the interim manager for my engineering team. At the time, I was a back-end Python developer. It was only a few years into my career as a programmer. I came from a teaching career. And I was pretty sure that I wanted to go down the IC path. I hadn't really been thinking about management at that point. But I said yes, and those first few months were super hard, but they were also really fun. And so when the opportunity arose to step into that position full-time, I took it. So May 2021, I was a director of engineering. But listen, you all saw the talk title. We know how this ends, right? Yeah, I missed coding. I missed focus time, and I missed just building things. You don't get to do that as much when you're an engineering manager. So I quit, and I've been unemployed ever since. Just kidding, I didn't quit. I did not quit. I had actually promised my leader, who had put me in that position, that I would not stress quit if I decided that management wasn't for me, and that I would let her know that I didn't really want to do that in the long run. So long story short, January of 2022, about a year after I stepped into that position, I moved back to being an individual contributor. And now, months and months after having my hands back in the code, I found that because of that year in leadership, I'm a better, more effective, and stronger individual contributor than I was before. So let me explain how. So after a year in engineering leadership, I no longer hesitate to suggest process changes. So let me tell you how I approached process changes before leading the team. Oops. I didn't. I kept all of my ideas to myself. And this is a real shame because I love processes. My husband describes me as a spreadsheet person, not affectionately, but I know you know what I mean. I'm sure that there are a few of us out there in the crowd. But, up to this point in my career as an IC, I didn't really feel like it was in my purview to affect process changes on teams. I kind of felt like, if somebody is managing a team, then they're passionate about the processes. They want to determine those and set those. And I also kind of had some imposter syndrome, right? Like, how could I possibly know better than my manager, how we should be doing things? But then I became an engineering leader, and I knew my team's processes were not perfect because I had lived them for the last year, and I had ideas on how to change them. This was totally me. I was just like, hold me back, we're going to make some changes. But in reality, there were impediments to enacting change that I hadn't really anticipated. I didn't have time to make all of the changes that I had been mulling over for the last year. And second, once I stepped into that leadership role, I wasn't even convinced that all those ideas that I'd had for the last year were even really good ideas anymore. My perspective was so different as a leader than it had been as an IC. So after a few months, I got wise and I asked my team for feedback. I wanted to know what they thought about how we could improve our processes. I collected this feedback during one-on-ones. I wanted to kind of avoid this loudest voice in the room effect that we can get when we ask that question during things like stand-up or retrospectives. I gave everyone plenty of time to prepare their thoughts in advance. And I really made sure to emphasize to everyone that, I wasn't married to any of the processes that we were currently implementing. Anything was open to change. And one broken process that came up during almost every single one of those one-on-ones was our production deployment process. So a lot of you are going to cringe at this. For all of these months, up until this point, I had been single-handedly managing deploying our code from staging to production. Yeah, I can't see your faces, but I'm sure you're wincing out there. This process included taking stock of everything that was in staging. So, had to go through like commit logs and Jira tickets and everything. QAing all of that stuff, manually sending out notifications that, we were going to be deploying, and then, monitoring the deployment, and then sending out notifications that the deployment was successful. And this would all unfold over the course of a day. So it was a major distractor. My rationale was it was time consuming, right? Like I just said. And especially when it hadn't been done for a few days, it could take some time to kind of get the ball rolling. But it was nerve wracking sometimes. Anybody who's ever, managed a production deployment knows that can cause a little bit of anxiety. So I wanted to protect my engineers from this task. I thought that was good process. But my team argued correctly that by taking on this task myself, I was devaluing my own focus time. I was too often becoming a bottleneck for getting code into production, delivering value to our customers, and that really by trying to protect them from this pain, I was really kind of an impediment to making that process easier. So much of it was manual while I was managing it, and there were some inefficiencies there. So that feedback was a gift. Together, we ended up tackling this process change. We automated so many of the steps. We ended up training everybody in the new process so that anybody could move their work from staging to production as soon as they had finished working on it. And the result was that we started shipping value to customers much more quickly. And that team, I'm very proud to say, has one of the highest deployment frequencies of any team in the company. So what I learned and I've tried to take forward from this experience is that initiating change as an IC, it's not a critique of your manager. It's just called taking ownership, right? And it's what we should be doing as ICs. So I've got some takeaways for leaders here. So first, make sure that your engineers understand that everyone on the team owns the team's processes, that they aren't prisoners to those existing processes, but rather co-creators of them. Make agreements as a team around those processes, and then periodically review them, subject them to scrutiny, subject them to experimentation, and then make revisions where necessary. And finally, find ways for your quieter or your new engineers to contribute their ideas. They're not always going to feel comfortable speaking up in the team meeting, speaking up and stand up. So don't neglect to use that one-on-one to pull your folks for those potential improvements. All right, so after leading an engineering team for a year, I am now honest when I need time to learn and to upskill. And this might seem kind of perverse, right? Former teacher, I work for Pluralsight, it's an upskilling platform. But if I'm being honest, before leading my team, if I didn't know how to complete a task, if I didn't know something that I needed to know, my impulse was to hide that from as many people as possible, especially my leader. And the result was paradoxical. I wouldn't ask for help, lest I should reveal my incompetencies. It's imposter syndrome, right? But because I refused to ask for help, I ended up working overtime to get my stuff done, just to have to ask for help in the end. Resulted in slow delivery times, contributed to burnout, and it increased my professional learning debt, which is kind of an interesting concept. Dr. Kat Hicks does research in developer experience, and this is a term I learned from her. So this is kind of a sad learning story, right? Like if you think about all of those lost learning opportunities that resulted from me just like being unwilling and unable to raise my hand and say, I don't know this yet. So let me tell you a happy learning story. So late last year, I'm leading the team, and an engineer came to me, and he was honest about his need to upskill before tackling a pretty complicated and high-stakes on-prem project. And his honesty was such a gift. It allowed me to set expectations with my leaders, with our project folks, and then also with our customers about, realistic timelines for delivering this piece. He took nearly a week, which sounds like a long time, but he took nearly a week to read and learn and to ask his teammates questions. There was no documentation on this thing that he was trying to do. So he took his week. And what ended up happening was that he over-delivered. He completed the project in less time than we had anticipated, and no bugs. Yeah, no bugs. Anybody who has worked on on-prem software and has then shipped that on-prem software knows that this is kind of a big deal. So what this engineer taught me was that our leaders don't expect that we know everything already. You know, when he came to me and he said, Kristen, I need some time to learn, I was grateful to him. It takes confidence to own our skills, our skills and our knowledge gaps. And I'm happy to report that I do this now. You know, when I don't know something, raise my hand and say, I'm going to need some time to upskill. I'm going to need some mentorship and guidance on this. And the results have been really, really good. And one kind of fun thing about this story is that this engineer is actually here. So Surya, I can't see you, but give us a wave. He now leads this engineering team. So what are the takeaways for leaders? Establish a culture of learning on your team. One really cool way to do this is to hold a learning-themed retrospective. We did this on my team, and what it ended up being was just some time for us all to share with each other, you know, how vulnerable it made us feel to declare to our teammates and to our leaders when we didn't know something, but also how important it is to share that and to actually take that time to upskill. Make learning visible for your individual contributors, maybe by making a JIRA ticket so that that time is taken into account during planning and so that it shows up during reviews. And finally, set an example for your engineers by being willing to raise your hands yourselves and admit when you don't know something yet. All right. And finally, after leading an engineering team for a year, I really deeply value my relationships with my teammates. So before leading my team, I'm super loath to admit this, but this was me. I was that person who kind of actively rejected, you know, hanging out with coworkers, never went out to get drinks after work. I took long walks during my lunch breaks to avoid having to like sit down and eat with my coworkers, which I'm not going to lie, I probably would still do if I reported to an office, but I am an introvert, so back off. And then I led an engineering team for a year. And we all know that this comes with one-on-ones, like lots and lots of one-on-ones, right? And during these one-on-ones, got to know my direct reports, their strengths, their weaknesses, their passions, their lives outside of work. And what I found was I kind of liked these people, kind of liked them a lot. And now as an IC, you know, I get to work alongside of them. And these relationships that I have with them, they just make a huge difference to me. I would be happy to eat lunch with them any day. So how has this made me a better IC? Well, this closeness that I feel to my teammates, it makes me work harder with them and for them. I'm much more cognizant of the part that I play as an IC in building that sense of community on my team. And I truly believe that coding is it's a community activity. It's a communal activity. And it makes me less likely to leave my company when the going inevitably gets tough. So what are the key takeaways for leaders? Well, make time for the deep and the personal stuff during your one-on-ones. And this can be really hard. Not everyone's going to be open to, you know, developing a personal relationship with you and the team, but it's possible. Find ways to facilitate relationship building on your team. At the beginning of stand-up, you know, rather than sitting there in silence, get folks talking to each other. Do an icebreaker. You know, do team bonding activities like playing Gartic Phone or playing GeoGuessr. And finally, and I think this one is really important, identify those people on your team. Identify those relationship builders who can be your allies in helping to build those relationships and that community on your team so that it doesn't seem like, you know, you're just kind of trying to force everyone to be friends with each other. All right, so I'm definitely over time, so let me just end with this thought here. You know, in each and every one of your individual contributors, there is a leader. You know that, but they don't necessarily know that. They might need to hear you say it. So please, leaders, empower your individual contributors to be leaders. Thank you.